What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Well, happy Fugazi Friday. The Dallas Cowboys squeak one out 20-15 on the road against the New York Giants, a night when the Yankees clinched the AL East. Daniel Jones looked okay, but not quite enough. A lot of injuries. Malik Neighbors at the end looked like he knocked himself out trying to have a sideline catch. And the Cowboys, it felt like, lost about 7 guys throughout the game, and they already had injuries coming in. That was just an injury fest, an injury penalty fest. Somewhat of a rough game, but we made it through. The Cowboys are 2-2. I don't want to say saved their season, but can take a deep breath. We'll dive into the game off the top. I do just want to hit on a theme that I get asked all the time, just the injuries. It does feel pretty outrageous. And, I mean, we're not even to October yet. And every single team is dealing with this. You know, the league has battled against safety. They suspend Derwin James for launching himself. Yet guys all around the league are constantly hurt. I mean, every single day you see a headline of a practice report, and this star is missing, this star is missing. It just feels like it's getting worse and worse by the year. And then a Fugazi I want to hit on before we get out of here. We'll also have a Stuckey later today up on the YouTube page, as well as a big mailbag out this weekend. So before we dive into the game, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners in the official ticketing app of this podcast, and they go by Game Time. Do you want to go to a game? Do you want to go to a concert? Do you want to go to a fun event? Get out of the house. Do something, enjoy yourself, smile, go hang out with a friend, a loved one, a wife, a girlfriend, a parent, and do it on us, because you can go to anything. You can search by venue. You can search by the event. You can search by the team. You can search by the artist or the comedian. And it's all with my friends at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code JOHN, JOHN, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Okay, let's dive into the game. Now, big picture. And I'm a big believer in this on Thursday night games, especially if you are the road team. And you're a road team like Dallas, you're pretty heavily favored. Thankfully for Aubrey missing a kick, which feels like he could make in his sleep, the Giants covered. We gave that bad boy out on Thursday's pod. But if you win on Thursday night on the road, I don't care how it looks. Obviously, if you have devastating injuries, we'll find out the severity over the next, 24 hours on Lawrence, on Micah Parsons, who, not ideal by any means. But a win's a win. And listen, this is the NFL. This is not college football. You're not going to beat teams by 20 points. I have no problem getting ugly wins on Thursday night. And on the bright side, obviously Dak has looked good this season. CeeDee Lamb is doing everything that you would want out of a guy that gets that much money. The amount of text messages I got tonight from 49er fans, it's like you're telling me Ayuk holds in, and obviously Ayuk is not the player CeeDee Lamb is. This guy holds out, shows up September 1st, and is just absolutely dominating. I'm like, yeah, that's what dominant players do. Like Justin Jefferson and him are basically the modern day Randy Moss and Terrell Owens. Obviously, they got a long way to go to match those guys' careers, but they are dominant players. And Dak and CD is like a special combination right now. But the main question on this Cowboy team is, it was not going to be answered tonight, because we said it coming into the game. It's like, you're not playing Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. You're not playing Alvin Kamara in the Shanahan scheme. You're playing Singletary in the Giants offense, who did not rush for 30 yards tonight. So you can give the Cowboys credit for handling the line of scrimmage, but I think you also be realistic. This was a good matchup for them. This was not a team that was going to run for 150 yards on them. And in turn, Daniel Jones, listen, if Trevor Lawrence just had the game Daniel Jones had, we would not be as critical as we've been with Trevor Lawrence. Like Daniel Jones looks pretty good. Honestly, if you just watch him and Dak, it doesn't, at least tonight, doesn't feel like there's a big difference. Now, I do believe that Dak is a better thrower on the go route. Daniel Jones, that's somewhat of a bugaboo of his, underthrowing just the route down the sideline, which he did tonight. But in fairness to him, the dude dropped it. It hit him in the hands. There were a couple plays tonight where it's like, yeah, not ideal ball placement, but this isn't high school football. It's the NFL. You know, if you touch it, you got to clutch it. Like if it hits your hands, even if you have to adjust, you got to make the play. But I do think the big picture question mark for the Cowboys is like the injuries, right? Diggs coming in and out of the game with cramps, happens short week. Maybe you're dehydrated. Obviously, if Micah Parsons has to miss any time, Lawrence has to miss any time. Like, how many defensive linemen can you lose? The running game for them is obviously going to be pretty average. They have I don't want to say an elite passing game, but they got a damn good passing game. Ferguson's an excellent player. I also have no problem with this. And while you're living through this, and I'm on a text chain with some Cowboy fans, they're like, God, 60 sucks. To me, part of drafting an offensive tackle high, and it's not like he's the third overall pick. You know, the Cowboys in the playoffs, you're drafting in the 20s. You kind of got to live through it early on. And ideally, this guy can become your left tackle for a decade. Now, we're a long way away from feeling comfortable doing that. But like part of drafting a guy and immediately inserting him at left tackle, like that's a difficult proposition. It is going to be a hold on to your ass moment in some of these games. Part of the deal. It's no different with these rookie quarterbacks. For every game that we just saw out of Jaden Daniels, you're going to see some games where he throws a pick six and has a fumble. Like it's part of the deal. It's football in the NFL. Like it happens to veteran players, but definitely rookies. So he's going to take a lot of crap. Like, listen, I commend them starting the guy. Obviously, they don't have many other options, but like you got to live through it. And if you're a Cowboy fan, you kind of keep your fingers crossed that he can kind of figure it out. But, you know, can the defense, one, health? We know Bland's out for a while, and their line hold up against the better teams they play. Like when they play the 49ers, when they play the Texans and Bobby Slowick, when they play the Eagles, it will not be the same as facing Singletary and Brian Daboll calling plays. It just won't be. So did we learn anything tonight? Did they just fix their defense? I would say no. But I would just say this. Thursday night game, as a road team, you take the win, you get on the plane, you get out of there. And you just pray to God when you get some medical results over the next 12, 24 hours that it's nothing too crazy. But anytime you got Micah Parsons without a shoe going on a cart to the locker room, it's a problem. Now, I didn't realize the extent of the kicker story. I knew that he was a soccer player, but when I went on Wikipedia and looked up Brandon Aubrey, and again, you got to take it with a grain of salt because Wikipedia, though I get a lot of my information there, he obviously was a soccer player after college. And when he got released from some team I'd never heard of, and he was watching an NFL game, and his wife looked at him and said, "You could do that." This is after kickers are missing. He starts training with a guy. A couple years later, he's in the UFL. And I understand he missed the last kick of the game, but I don't think it's really arguable he's the best kicker in the league right now. There's no one from 50 plus that not only you feel is automatic, he's going to split the uprights. So, like, listen, people are hard on Jerry, and you don't get that much credit because he plays kicker if he was a pass rusher or a right tackle or something. That's a pretty incredible find to find a guy. I think they mentioned, or I saw it on Twitter, that he has more points in fantasy than like every tight end in the NFL. So he's a very, very valuable player. And if you're going to be like, you just cross the 50, you're in his range. So what a story. What a find. To get the guy out of the UFL. I mean, cool for him. A soccer player just turned. If I was some of these other kids in soccer and I had no future to make the MLS or make some of these European leagues, I might start training. And you could tell, like, after he makes a field goal, he's not some 5'6" kid. I mean, well, he's not even a kid. He's 29 years old. He graduated from Notre Dame, or at least left to play professional soccer in 2019. But he's interesting. But at the end of the day, listen, the Cowboys, I bet there's going to be a lot of negativity about them tomorrow, which I understand, but you just had to win this game. And it more than likely it wasn't going to be pretty, and it was not. They do not look as potent as they've looked in previous years. You just got to find a way till ideally you can get healthy maybe later in the season to kind of hover around 500. And hopefully the Eagles fuck up a little bit along the way. I think Washington's a little smoke and mirrors because their defense is, I mean, you think the Cowboys defense is bad. That defense is way worse. So, like, can you compete to win this division if you can just hover, around 500 and try to get to 10, 11 wins? We'll find out a lot about the Eagles this weekend, who have a bunch of injuries. Devontae Smith had a concussion. Lane Johnson has a concussion. We'll see how many of these guys play against Tampa. We know how well Tampa played against them last year. Now new coordinators, but still, like, if you're the Cowboys, you just got to find a way to just keep your head above water. Obviously, tonight was must win. You couldn't fall to 1-3. Like, the Giants can fall to 1-3. None of us thought they were any good. And I think the weird spot for them is, Daniel Jones is kind of proving to be serviceable, and he's not their problem. I mean, their running game is just not going to be good. Like, listen, they made the financial decision to let Saquon go, but the drop off of him and Singletary when Joe Schoen is in that meeting with the owner saying, for this amount of money, I don't think there's a big difference. No, there's a big difference. But you invest in other positions. Brian Burns made a couple flash plays. But man, I mean, I just think you're in for a long, long season. I mean, Malik Neighbors clearly a special talent. He knocks himself out trying to catch the ball on the sideline, but it's just going to be a long year. It really is. And we knew it coming in. And we know McCarthy's coaching for his job. I think you have to question the situation in New York, right? Like, if the GM is quote unquote on the hot seat and this year doesn't go well, usually you don't just fire the GM and keep the coach, and things could just get weird. And let's face it, they have been weird in New York for a long time. This team has not been good since I can remember. I mean, they've started 0-2 10 of the last 12 years. Basically, after they won the Super Bowl, beside the Miami Love Boat year where they got worked in Green Bay with Odell Beckham, I think that was 2016, they have mainly been pretty shitty. And post Eli Manning, they have been a train wreck beside 2 years ago when he won Coach of the Year. Sometimes, hey, won Coach of the Year. What, they 13? No, they went 9-8. It was one of the greatest overachievements you'll ever see in the history of the NFL. Now, they do have some core players. Lawrence is good. Kayvon looks, solid. I don't know if he'll ever live up to being a top 10 pick, but he's a good player. You got Burns. You got Malik Neighbors. You got left tackle who played pretty well tonight. But overall, this is a team going nowhere fast. And unlike Dallas, there just aren't expectations, beside maybe internally and with the owner, who has shown kind of to have a quick trigger finger when it comes to keeping guys. That's why I keep talking about the situation in terms of their job status, because the owner has proved it. He ran through coaches and GMs at a rapid speed after having a long tenure with Tom Coughlin. From McAdoo to Shermer to Joe Judge to now these guys who, I mean, what would you say? 5 wins? You know, I mean, it's just hard to keep your job. Like, 5 wins now in the NFL with 17 games. That's a brutal year, man. And when you have back-to-back situations where last year you're drafting sixth, and again you're drafting, let's just hypothetically say fourth. Because the thing, they're not bad enough to have the number one overall pick. And I think the question mark is, how many quarterbacks, and it's hard because there's so much college football season left to play. Obviously, there's a quarterback inflation. But I think there's you have to wonder if there's going to be a reverse of that after seeing all these quarterbacks get drafted and a lot of them not living up to the hype. Are you better off just taking Malik Neighbors and taking high end players and maybe taking a guy in like the second or third round? It's not usually what the fans want, but when you take a guy really high, you see it with Daniel Jones, and he, I mean, been a total roller coaster of a career, but it kind of teases you, and then you get stuck and you get into a weird spot. So I don't know, man. It's gonna be a long, long season for the old Gigantes. I love touchdowns. Tutties, taking it to the house, in for 6. I call them tugs. Whenever you call a touchdown, one thing's for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams or defense, we do not care how they score them. We want to bet on touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something as simple like picking a player to score a touchdown or how many touchdowns will be in a game. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Ready to do a touchdown dance on your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN, J-O-H-N. That's code JOHN. New customers get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. One big picture thing in the NFL that is just, obviously it's a violent sport and people have always got injured playing the game. But it now feels early on in the season that we've never had more injuries. I mean, it's a consistent theme, I would say, these last couple years. That by the time we're getting into week 4, week 5, like half the teams in the league are missing most of their good players. And we've done a good job as a sport, and I say we because, listen, I love football, of protecting or attempting to protect the quarterback. And I'm as guilty as anyone. I get pissed off at it because some of them are like, that's not let that go. You don't need to throw a flag. But we cannot function without those guys. But I do think when you look at the taking away double days in training camp, nobody plays in the preseason. Unlike previous generations, these guys do spend a lot of money on their body and training 24/7, 365. And you have to wonder if that catches up to them because they almost get so big and so strong, but they don't play that much football because in training camp, you're not tackling to the ground. And honestly, I would say relative to previous generations, it is not very conducive to practicing physical football. None of them play in preseason games, basically. And if they do, beside like Andy Reid's squad, it's for a series or 2 max. And then you immediately just start the games, which are just full go, full live, everyone flying around. Guys getting hit, guys falling funny. And you have to wonder if there's some sort of, in boxing, you spar for a reason. Like you build up the calluses, right? You can go to the driving range until you can't grip a golf club. Doesn't mean anything for your golf game once you play an actual round. It's no different in all these sports. You can play pickup basketball games. You can take simulated BP. Obviously, the games are so much different. And there's nothing like football where in a practice, when you're not going to tackle anybody, it is not the actual sport, even if you are wearing full pads. And you just see these guys constantly get injured and not make it even into October. I'm not acting like we need to go back to Junction Boy style and have 7 weeks of double days, but I think we all can acknowledge, starting with the league office and who was terrified to get sued for CTE stuff, that the change in the rules, which the players fought for, right? The owners wanted more money. They wanted less practice and more days off, has not been conducive to their health. And they are constantly getting injured more. And then if you're the owners, because of the money the league is making, you're never paying these players more money at all these positions minus quarterback. And then you go to the games and half of them are always in street clothes. So how's that good for you? It's not. It feels like it's a lose-lose for everyone, including us, the fans that just want to watch the best players play. And like I said, it's football. Guys have always gotten injured. It's a part of the game. But it feels on a weekly basis when you just turn on the TV on a Sunday or look at the internet on a Friday at the end of a practice week. It's like half the teams on the injury report being questionable or doubtful. It did not feel like that. I mean, just go to some of the best players, the Pro Bowl guys in the 80s and 90s, and look at how many games they played over the course of their career. Most of them aren't missing that much time. Now, the counter argument could be look at how long their careers were. They were a lot shorter. So I would imagine if I was a player and I had an injury, I would be less likely to push it because if I can get that third contract, I mean, we bank another 60, 80, $100 million. So I just know that we're just out of whack here. And I don't think we're going back because they're not going to add more physical practices. Coaching staffs and definitely front offices are not going to change their mindset on this. But I think we're losing, being us, people that watch the sport. The teams are losing. Sucks for the players that can't play in the games. It's just a shitty deal all around. And I'll get you out of here on this. I do think one of the biggest Fugazis going, and it really hit me last week. My fiance Maria has this client. She's actually never met him in person. She got linked up with him. Rich guy from Southern California who wants to move here for tax purposes by the start of 2025. And he's been looking in these high-end neighborhoods. And he was looking in this place that I wanted to check out because it's like this private kind of it's not even a golf course. There's 7 golf courses. And each golf course has its own like 5-star restaurant. And basically people that live in this community never have to leave because once you're a member, if you want to be a social member, it's like $150,000. If you want to be a golf member, it's $250,000. And the wait list to be a golf member is almost 24 months. And I had heard about it, and she was looking at a house there for him to take some pictures. So I'm like, I'll come. So I'm checking out the Zillow, and it's like $2 million house. That's on the lower end of this community. And the pictures on Zillow just made this thing look like, God, this thing's a steal. And then you get there, and the pictures on Zillow, and I'm pro Zillow, own the stock. It's been good for me, up about 35%. But they look nothing like Zillow. The house I'm sitting in right now, I remember before we bought it, we'd been monitoring it. I'm like, how is the price dropping on this thing? Look at these pictures. And I remember coming over here for the first time when we looked at it, and I was like, oh, that's why the price keeps dropping. The house looks nothing like the pictures. Now, granted, we gutted the whole thing, but that's why. It was a full gut job. And I think one of the biggest fugazis is when you look at Zillow and you look at these pictures, to me, it's like Instagram filter or a dating app filter. Anyone that's ever used dating app, you're like, ah, she's kind of a babe. And then you get there, you're like, oh, damn. I was duped. And that's what it kind of feels like right now. Now, I get it. I would do the same thing. I guess I've done similar, but I could only do so much in the last piece of property I sold. It was a condo. But I feel like pretty universally that the pictures are the dating apps of houses. It's a complete fool job. Now, ultimately, most people, I guess back in 2020 and 2021, a lot of people around the country were buying homes sight unseen. I would say that's definitely a little different now with interest rates being higher. Obviously, prices, at an all-time high. So people are probably a little more hesitant to not physically be at a place if they don't live in the area. But I'd be very, very careful because I think these Zillow pictures, I don't care what the price point is. The price point could be, $500,000 or it could be millions of dollars, is a complete curveball. You walk into that thing, you're amped to see it, and then you're like, wait, is this was the picture of the backyard of this thing? Well, what? So keep an eye on those Zillow pics.